Not every jealous person is racist, and not every racist person is jealous, but there is a fine line between the two. And when I start observing society, I really realize that most times racism is often masked through jealousy and through envy. And it's deep envy and deep jealousy of seeing another person happy, because if you get to the point where you finally see people free, there's a certain kind of jealousy of wanting them in a state of not being free. And we know this whether we speak about the racial aspect of jealousy, or narcissism. We already know that narcissists in general, do not like the notion of having their victims free. And so we do live in a society that works on hierarchy, superiority, inferiority complex. And we also notice that most of our systems have been based on that, because that is what keeps things running. That's what has kept things, being standard. And I can attest to this because I've noticed this literally in my personal life. The moment I lived in Germany, racism started becoming way different than what I experienced or what I kind of knew from my family or through South Africa's history of apartheid. And I I found this interesting because, it would be criticism, criticism on history, criticism on, identity, criticism on resources. Like, why don't you guys have this? Why don't you guys have your own Aristotle and your own Greek mythology? Why don't you, the certain kind of ignorance around your haves and your haves not. And then the very things that you do have was usually criticized, but also kind of desired. And I can talk about this as a woman, I think women, black women know this very well that first and foremost, it was very funny growing up in Germany where once upon a time the image of beauty was a skinny blonde woman with a flat butt and a flat stomach. And my Barbie dolls, everything advertised as a little girl was literally the image of a blonde, skinny tall girl. And this was idealized as a certain kind of image of beauty, right? And I remember, growing up, I was quite chubby and I was quite, developing into a woman, but my body was more curvy and it was, accentuated, and it was more voluptuous than my peers or my colleague or friends back then. And this used to be kind of like a ridicule, but an underlying, how can I say it? There would be underlying tones of criticism, but like snarks, marks. And I find this funny because 10 years later, from both sides, on the one side, we desire what we don't have, and I've seen a lot of women. I mean, you can attest to this, a lot of women have shaped their bodies to be more desirable. Now, the very same thing that was ridiculed and laughed at, like having big lips, big butt, big thighs, is the very same thing and very same a cultural appropriation that is being advertised as beauty today. And also with hair as well, women, black women, we love to dress our hair in different ways, whether it's straight, whether it's braided. The very same things that were once ridiculed is becoming a commercial construct of appropriation and from both sides. Like, we want to wear each other's skin basically. And we also realize that a lot of my friends that I have um had issues with, and they were from a different race, they would have issues on the fact that my body was more desirable than theirs. And you know through that criticism and those remarks, of trying to make fun of my appearance in some shape or form, I noticed that too relies in with a little bit of jealousy, because if you had to be on the food chain top of the food chain for so long, and you had constantly, lived your life out of somebody's strife. You had made a safety zone or a safe net on being desirable in society, and then suddenly that food chain reshifts and restructures and deconstructs what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be desirable, or what it means to be free, or identically, physically and emotionally or financially. Suddenly that sense of autonomy or power becomes shaken by the form of seeing another person that is not like you, free, or more happier than you. And that is where that underlying tone of jealousy and envy comes in. And so this is definitely something that I've noticed, that most people don't know why they hate Black people. Most people don't know why they hate them. Most people don't even know why they hate white people. And yet there is some history that can back it up, but it's also the fact of the emotional intensity. Sometimes you hate them because you realize that everything's been dished out for them, and that's what I'm talking about, the haves and haves not. And then sometimes you hate Black people because you realize that there's much more freedom of culture, dance, food, names, and so much diversity than the actual culture that we've all been trained in or westernized in. And I found this very interesting. So, but I'll keep this very short. Have you noticed that there's a little bit of subtle racism and envy? I mean, there's a little bit of envy and jealousy within racism. And have you also noticed that sometimes, even when we do have diverse friends, they always highlight things that we may not see about ourselves, our own race, our own culture, and yet those very same compliments, gosh, I wish I had your hair, it's so thick, or I wish I had your butt, it's so luscious, and all those comments are subtly a bit filled with envy and a bit of jealousy, because if the shoe had to fit, and if, your brother had to come around, there's that kind of thing. Like, how would you play, if you had to be in somebody else's skin, or shoes? I find this very interesting because this is the world that we live in, and when we constantly deconstruct, how society has tried to identify us through our race, our gender, and our ethnic beauty and all that. It's very interesting to realize, hang on, I am not my hair, I'm not my skin, I'm not your expectations of where and how I should be or live or think or act or talk. And I love this because once you sense patterns, and once you sense a little bit of subtle envy, jealousy, and hate, you realize that everything around you is just an illusion of or a construct of how people, places, and things must box you and place you according to your identity. Yeah, I'm going to keep this very short, and I basically would love to hear your thoughts on this. Has this shown into your everyday life when you see an everyday Karen, attacking people enjoying themselves at a park or at a beach, and finding the need to control these people in some shape, way, or form, or call the police on them, utilizing a certain kind of power, especially in America? Have you also noticed this maybe in Johannesburg when you are maybe a white person, and the whole city is not really open to your ideas? We can see this maybe as Helen Ziller. That too can be something to be discussed, because there is some kind of subtleness in both sides of the world, But at the end of the day, I hope you get what I'm saying, and I hope you yeah, engage with me and let me know in the comments. Do you also believe that racism is often masked as jealousy or envy? And have you seen people who are not jealous or not racist still envious in some shape or form? What fine line is there between the two? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as well. Share this with somebody, and let's have this conversation to deconstruct all these programmings that take place in society. And I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.